This is the Life with Grief podcast, the podcast that talks about and normalizes the complexities of grief, life after loss, and all this entails, and so much more. I want you to think of this podcast as a safe space where I'm a friendly face and we're just journeying through this together to figure out how to live life with our grief in tow. I'm your host, Tara Accardo. I'm a grief and transformational life coach, and I'm here to serve you guidance, support, tangible coping tools, inspiration, and some laughs along the way to help you cultivate a more meaningful, intentional, and beautiful life. But grieving or not, we're getting into countless topics here on the podcast, from coping with loss to self-development and so much more. I'm so grateful you're here. Let's dive right in. Hey guys, welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, Tara Accardo. And today I wanted to dig into a type of loss that often isn't really discussed or acknowledged in the way that I feel it should be, at least, and that is the loss of a job. We talk a lot about death and the loss of a loved one on this podcast, but today I wanted to pivot because this has really sort of been on my heart lately. I've seen it a lot kind of around on LinkedIn, and just I felt like it was a really important topic that we hadn't talked about on the podcast yet today. So that being said, the approach I want to take with this episode is to not only validate and hold a space to acknowledge how difficult this type of loss is and talk about ways to cope with this the best that we can, of course, but I want to take it a step further and touch on how this type of loss can affect our psyche and our self-worth. And to build on that, we'll finish it out with how we can reframe our mindset if this does happen to us, and how we can move forward from there with a renewed sense of hope and purpose. So I wanted to kick off this episode today by first just acknowledging job loss. Like I said, holding space for this and giving some credit where credit is due here. Losing a job is hard. And let's be real, whether it's one you genuinely enjoy or one you were sort of kind of meh about, the shock, the discomfort, the anxiety, the worry that this can cause is undeniable for most of us, at least. And let's be real, the most stress-inducing aspect of losing a job for many of us is probably the need for a stable income to support yourself or your family. We all got bills to pay, right? That probably goes without saying. So no matter how we might feel about our job, the feeling of comfort and, bringing home that paycheck is perhaps close to number one in terms of why we even have a job in the first place. And hopefully it's also doing something we enjoy. But that being said, I wanted to just share an interesting statistic. According to an article from Zippia, 65% of at least United States workers are happy with their job, but only 20% consider themselves passionate about their jobs. And likewise, only 49% of American workers report being, quote, very satisfied with their work, while 30% are just somewhat satisfied. So think about that for a moment. Where do you feel like you fall here? And this is not a trick question. It's just whatever you're feeling. But I just wanted to set the stage and get your mind going a little bit for a later part of the discussion that we'll be getting into that I think is really important in terms of discovering work and a job that we genuinely love. So as far as witnessing job loss, you might be like, Tara, who are you to speak on this topic? I have personally seen job loss in two ways in my life, and of course see people on social media and people that I work with and people on LinkedIn. So many of us struggle with this type of loss as well, of course. One situation for me was when I was let go from a company that I was with for nearly 8 years. And another situation was a company where I witnessed others losing their jobs. And I'll get into this more in a moment. But just to set the scene, I had been working for this same large company for almost 8 years in different positions. I loved this company. I enjoyed the work I did for this company. That current position I was in when this happened was a little emotionally and physically taxing, not gonna lie, because I had to get up really early some mornings, like I'm talking 4 a.m. some days to get to the location. So basically, I was a brand manager and I did merchandising, and all of that had to happen in the morning before the store opened. And honestly, despite the early mornings, I really loved it. Long story short, this particular store I was working in was not doing the best financially. It was in a mall that had just really suffered in foot traffic in the years leading up to it. And it was affecting our sales goals pretty badly. And so fast forward, when I was let go, the store ended up closing probably 4 to 5 months later, if that. But at the time, my position was eliminated due to various reasons. And all of a sudden, my time at this company overall, that I had spent so much of my 20s and even before that with, ended. It ended just like that. As another example of seeing some job loss around me, a company I had previously worked for faced some financial woes, especially coming out of COVID, and they had to cut a slew of people over the span of about 6 months. I was fortunate in that I did not lose my role in this company, but some dear colleagues of mine did, and needless to say, some took it well, some did not. But one interesting thing that I realized in that transition was this. The people that were more satisfied in their job and connected to the company or the people or the work, or that had just been there a long time, took the news harder than those who weren't as satisfied and hadn't been there as long, or they weren't as emotionally invested in the company. And for those that were, I saw the effect that it had on them. Some somewhat from a distance. I might have seen something on social media that they posted. And in some cases, I saw that firsthand. But either way, truthfully, it was just sad to watch. You could tell that the wind had just been taken out of their sails a little bit. And also they were just now very stressed, like, okay, what am I going to do next? And it made me realize how we truly mourn the loss of a job or a role at a company that we so love, or we mourn the fact that we're not near these, coworkers that really become more like family. And it can happen at the drop of a hat. So there could be a slew of reasons of why the loss of a job could be difficult to cope with. So let's get some of these out in the open really quick and just validate some of these stressors here if this is where you're at today. Like I've been saying, number one, financial stress and worry. As I mentioned, this is one of the primary difficulties of losing a job, of course. It's this immediate impact on your financial stability. And the sudden loss of income can lead to, financial strain, difficulty just meeting daily expenses, paying bills, feeding ourselves or our family, potentially facing, the risk of debt or eviction. The list goes on. Number two, though, again, kind of digging deeper into this type of loss, your loss of identity or routine or emotional attachment that you had to this job or this company. And losing a job often means we have a daily routine of some sorts and we have this sense of purpose. For a lot of us, it gives us a reason to get up and get out of bed in the morning. And especially if you didn't see it coming, this, like I said, can happen very suddenly, which is rightfully very shocking. And many people strongly identify with their professions and they derive a sense of identity, accomplishment, and fulfillment from their work. And especially if someone has been with a company for many years, this can be especially hard to grapple with. And I know two people actually that come to mind, one in my family and one I previously worked with, that took months, seriously months, to fully recover from losing a job that they had for 8 years and over 20 years, respectively. So when a job is lost, it can disrupt a person's sense of self and purpose. It can lead to feelings of confusion and, loss, obviously, and a lack of direction. And additionally, I see a lot of people who feel that they are, quote, older in their career. This is their words, not mine. Or, they're just further along in their work experience. And there's often a concern that it will affect their chances or ability to get rehired. And as much as I always wish, they didn't feel this way, sadly, I understand it. It's so valid. Age discrimination is still very rampant. It's a totally valid concern. For the record, I think there is a place for everyone in the workplace, okay? Like, I would be remiss if I did not call this out because it's completely understandable how they feel. I just feel like we can make space for everyone no matter where they are at. in their number of years on this earth, okay? I just want to put that out there. So we can do better. We can do so much better where that's concerned. But number 3 here as to why job loss can be hard: social isolation and emotional attachment to their colleagues. I've mentioned this already, but work often provides a social network of sorts and a sense of belonging, particularly when you really enjoy your colleagues. Some of us might kind of despise our colleagues. I get that. But suddenly being separated from coworkers that we might really, have come to love, or the work setting that we're in, that can be incredibly hard. And losing a job can cause this undeniable and sudden disconnection from our coworkers and, work-related social interactions. And this isolation can contribute to a lot of feelings of loneliness and a loss of a support system. Often for so many of us, especially a lot of us are 9 to 5 or work roughly 40 hours a week or something. We're spending just as much, if not more time at work and with these other people than we are at home sometimes, which I think is so sad, but that's neither here nor there. But either way, this makes the situation even more challenging to navigate. And a 4th point here is we can have concern over career setbacks. So I know I kind of mentioned age here, but regardless of age in this particular point, losing a job can bring a lot of fear and concern for what is next in our careers. Gaps in employment and a job loss on a resume can sometimes raise concerns for potential employers and make it more difficult to find and secure employment. And for those of us who lost a job, this can lead to, of course, a prolonged job search, added stress because of this, a sense of uncertainty about our professional future. More on this later, though, so hang with me. And another point I just want to make here is the effect that a job loss can have on our relationship. Financial strain and emotional distress resulting from job loss can really take a toll on relationships with our family, with our friends, with our loved ones, with a partner, of course. And that added pressure and changes in lifestyle can lead to conflict, it can lead to tension, and just overall this need to readjust priorities and expectations. And again, sometimes that can happen very quickly, especially if you are let go from a position very suddenly. So I'll finish out these points with just, this 6th thing that it can be so difficult with job loss is just the emotional distress of it all. It can be very emotionally taxing. It can trigger a range of negative emotions. Like I said, shock, disbelief, sadness, anger, frustration, anxiety, fear of an uncertain future, and especially coupled with the somewhat unfair, in my opinion, stigma that's associated with unemployment. And that can lead, of course, to a decline in self-esteem in some cases, a lack of confidence, and just our overall well-being. So with that all being said, just again, to validate and get all of that out in the open, where do we go from here? How do we begin to make sense of all of this? How do we cope with this new reality that we find ourselves in, figure out what all of this means for us, and find out what our future holds? Let's get into that next. Real quick interruption here, and then we'll get back to this episode. If you are someone who is experiencing some form of loss and are trying to navigate the complexities of grief, which you likely are in some capacity if you've stumbled upon this podcast, then this message is for you. If you haven't heard about my intentional Life After Loss membership and community yet, this is truly something you need to check out. This membership is here to guide you into living a deeper, more meaningful, and full life after experiencing loss. Who doesn't want that? Right? I created this membership because I know what it's like to navigate and cope with grief on a daily basis. I know how hard that can be, and I know the tools and support it takes to do this effectively. I've done the work myself, and I've coached people just like you to do the same. It comes down to having impactful, effective resources and tools at your disposal, having the right support around you from people who can understand and empathize with your grief, and having encouragement and inspiration around you consistently to not only elicit and spark change, but to keep it and keep the positive momentum going. Enrollment opens once a month for a limited time. Check out the details linked in the description, and I hope to see you in there. So let's now talk about coping with this job loss, but more importantly, just finding a way forward. So in terms of how we can cope with this, number one, first and foremost, allow yourself to grieve. Allow yourself to grieve this, just as we would the death of a loved one. You know, this is often the more accepted, quote unquote, type of grief that people are quicker to acknowledge. The loss of a job, that deserves to be grieved as well. So acknowledge your feelings and give yourself permission to mourn this loss, because it is a loss that deserves to be mourned. It deserves that time and attention. It's natural to feel a range of emotions here, but processing them properly, that is an essential step toward healing from this sudden, unexpected reality that we might find ourselves in. A second thing here is to seek support. This is so important. If there was ever a time when we need emotional support, of course, outside of the death of a loved one or some other major loss, it's now. It's a time when we are feeling pressure from countless directions, emotionally and financially, of course, often being the most prominent. So I just want to encourage you, don't be afraid to lean on and reach out to family, friends, or a supportive network who can provide, just comfort and understanding or direction, right? Or can at least calm you down a little bit when you need it. And when in doubt, I also want to implore you, seek out counseling or maybe even like a business or a career coach. And yes, I know a coach can cost money that you might not feel that you have right now, but if you can swing it, I really recommend this, because the doors that it can unlock for you can be really incredible, not only just for you and your mental health, but it could be beneficial to you and your long-term career, right? And who knows, you could end up making more money. You could go in a different direction that you never even considered. So in some of these cases, think about it as an investment, right? Like, who knows what you could discover with working with a professional like that. But either way, sharing your feelings and your experience with others who perhaps have gone through a similar situation, or maybe they haven't, but they can at least empathize and give you the right type of help that you need, that can help you gain some perspective and just offer you some valuable support when you need it the most. Another thing here, take care of yourself. I hope this goes without saying, but a shocking number of people don't prioritize this. So focus on self-care. Engage in those activities that help you relax and relieve that stress. And I'm not going to get too far into self-care here. I know that's like a very high-level term, but whatever this means for you, yes, maybe it does mean you just treat yourself and you go get that massage that you've been putting off for so long. But it could also just mean getting out and exercising, getting some fresh air, maintaining just a healthy diet. That is important. I know like those things don't always associate with loss, especially that of a job. You're like, I don't need to be eating healthy. I need to be on the job hunt. Like, take it down a second, take a beat, making sure you are getting enough sleep and that you are taking care of your mental and physical health. That is really important. And yes, sure, you can job hunt your heart out and update your resume and your LinkedIn and all of the good things, but you've got to make sure that you are taking care of all of the above, right? It's just about a good balance. Another thing you can do here is to create a plan, of course, right? This is one of the first things you can do if this ever happens. And if the loss of a job ever happens to you, think about this as taking intentional, productive steps each and every day, right? So I don't want you doing this in a way that is going to overwhelm you. Just do this in a way that's like, if you can put your head on your pillow that night and know that you did all that you could do that day and feel good about it, that's a step in the right direction. So whether this is scouring job sites and doing research on what's out there and, making a note of which ones you might be interested in applying for, updating your resume, securing references, maybe even researching an entirely new career and what it would take to get into that, networking, either virtually or in person, loading up on training opportunities to boost your skills. All of the above is great. So developing a plan of action to move forward, however that looks to you, but doing this in manageable chunks so you don't overwhelm yourself in an already very overwhelming situation, right? Like, please remember, job loss it's a lot. You know this if you ever have or are going through this. So I want you to give yourself time and space and grace to honor that. But also, just creating a plan, it can be a very empowering thing to do too. So I encourage you, have some fun with it. Don't put this crazy amount of pressure on yourself. And I just want to interrupt myself here too. All of that being said, all of those action steps I just talked about, please know and remember, it's okay to just take a day, take a morning, take an afternoon, just take a break too, right? Drop your shoulders, do some breath work, and just allow yourself to just be. I understand the pressure of feeling the need to get on it and get on another job. I want to validate that. And absolutely, of course, that's important, especially if we have other mouths to feed. I hear you, right? This is all easier said than done. But also use this opportunity for this break in unemployment to reset a little bit too. And I just want to mention this as well. I, at one point, was someone who was a hiring manager on a digital marketing team. And even if someone had a gap in their resume, at least on our team, if we saw that they were doing supplemental projects or trainings or, certifications or something on the side, that for us at least was a really great sign. And that typically impressed us. And it kind of softened the blow of any little gap or a lapse in resume, because people have all kinds of reasons for being unemployed, especially if it is for, maybe a little bit of a bigger or prolonged period of time. A lot of employers might be more understanding of a period of unemployment than you might think. And listen, some might not be, right? But like I said, I think many understand that life and company changes happen. And of course, if you get an interview or you are writing a cover letter or something, that you might have an opportunity to explain some of this. But in my point of view, if you show a willingness to take the bull by the horns and learn and grow as you're finding your way and as you're finding this new job, how could they not give you some credit for that, right? How could they not be impressed a little bit? That at least shows you're trying. And like I said, I know it's hard to communicate that sometimes if it's just in a very generic application situation that's maybe all online, but however you might be able to note that supplemental learning or training that you're doing, get scrappy. Find a way to do that. And also, of course, hopefully this goes without saying, but following up with HR, if the company has an HR department or a hiring department, whatever, once you apply, definitely a good call. But regardless, setting really specific, realistic goals, having little steps that you're going to take each day, maybe thinking about that, writing that out, and actually taking those steps towards those things can help you regain a sense of control and purpose and take a little bit of that overwhelm out of it, because you're being super strategic with it. And again, you are setting those intentional actions and you're doing them. You're doing the damn thing. So listen, you're working towards something that's beautiful, that deserves to be celebrated. Another aspect of this is to reflect and reevaluate. This is my favorite part of the process. I cannot recommend enough using this transition period to reflect on your career goals, your values, and your aspirations. And a great way to do this is to consider what you enjoyed about your previous job and what you might want in your future career. Use this as an opportunity to reevaluate your skills, your strengths, and maybe some areas for development. And as I said, it could be a chance to explore new possibilities or make a career change too, right? So more coming up on this in a minute when we are going to talk about reframing our mindset. But first, I just wanted to share something really quick with you. Earlier I mentioned I was let go from that company that I had been with for 8 years. just after that happened, and mind you, I live in Northern California, so wine industry is big out here. But my dad was actually temporarily moving back to the East Coast for work, and he was going to drive across the US to do that. So I went with him part of the way. We drove through California and Arizona and New Mexico, and then I flew home from there. And on that trip down, we were talking a lot about just where I saw my career going, great father-daughter talk. And something that really came to me was teaching English. And my cousin had actually done this somewhere in Asia. And so I was kind of picking his brain about it. And there was just something about it that really resonated with me. So I started doing research actually on that trip, but then I came home and I started doing more. And before I knew it, I got a job in the wine industry. So I completely pivoted from retail, like fashion retail, to the wine industry. I got a job in a tasting room, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. And in the meantime, and this feels a little slimy saying this now, but as I was working for them, I was also looking at ways at making my dream come true of living in Italy, at least for a few months, however long I could. And I did that. And in that time, I not only totally changed careers and changed jobs into something that I actually really enjoyed for the time that I had it, but I was doing something and I was working towards something that I was so excited about, and I knew was going to change my life, and it was going to open new doors and be such an adventure. And I think it was maybe 10 or 11 months later, I made the move to Italy. I went and I got it's a TEFL certification, the Teaching English as a Foreign Language certification. I got that in Florence. From there, I got a job in Rome teaching English to the Italian military. I never, ever would have envisioned any of that for myself, nor would I have ever felt that that was a possibility. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind had this job loss not happened. So I just tell you this story, hopefully to inspire you just a little bit, but also just as a testament to you never know what opportunities are going to knock on your door. But of course, we also have to make it happen for ourselves too. Had I just had gotten, any old other job or whatever and not kind of taken that time to explore, I never would have made it to Italy, which is my dream country. I hope to move back there one day with my husband and my daughter now that they have citizenship, and I'm going to be working on mine. So it's just a story. It's just my experience. But again, it's just an example of an opportunity that can come your way when you really allow yourself that time and that opportunity to get to know yourself again and what you really want out of life. So that all being said, I want you to remember two important things here before we wrap up this episode. Number one, losing a job can feel like a setback, for sure, but it does not define your worth or future success. First of all, I believe in you. You have that in me, my friend, but I want you to believe in yourself too. That is where the magic and motivation will happen, and that's where those things ultimately come from. No one can do that for us. No one can give us that other than us. And believe that with the right effort and mindset and putting your desires out into the universe with the right action steps, you can recover from whatever this job loss looks like for you and find new opportunities that align with your goals and aspirations. And maybe there are things that you haven't even explored or thought of yet. And number two, despite this current challenge, remember that losing a job is not necessarily a reflection of your worth or abilities. I want to also interject by saying that sometimes, as I mentioned in my example from earlier, it is simply about the company and the status of that and not you. I cannot tell you how many companies I have heard about and were a part of that have had to let people go because of financial hardship, especially after COVID-19. And sometimes, whatever the circumstances, it just comes with the territory. Is this fair? No, it sure does not always feel that way. And remember, some employers are really pained to have to eliminate positions if that's the case. but it's really just a matter of what they can afford and what they have to do at that point. I have totally been there. But think about it too. If this company can't afford you or see the value in your work, it might be time to find someone who can and who does, right? So this leads me to just a quick conversation on reframing our mindset. While job loss can feel really devastating, highly stressful, and an absolute gut punch, if you are there today, I want for you to open your mind to the possibility that this can present new opportunities. Just like in my early example and my story about how getting fired ultimately led to one of the greatest adventures and career shifts I could have ever asked for. Now, yes, I know you might hear this all the time and people coming in from left and right telling you to stay positive and look on the bright side and it'll all be okay. We don't need to douse this experience with toxic positivity and those platitudes. Sometimes we just need to sit there in our feels and be like, well, this absolutely sucks, right? But hear me out on something. This might be a little woo-woo, what I'm about to say, but I want for you to consider that there could be some higher power working in your favor. Just crack open that door for a second and open your mind to that right now. That is all I want you to do. Why? Because with adversity comes growth, comes learning, and evolutions beyond our wildest dreams or expectations. There might be something bigger and better for you out there that you don't even know or see yet, but it's trying to make its way to you. You just have to open yourself up to it and believe it's coming and welcome it with open arms. And sometimes the losing of a job can lead us to that. That opens us up to that expansion. So just give that some consideration if this is something you are going through or if you ever do at some point, even if it's not a job loss. I would love for you to just keep this in mind all day, every day, because I genuinely think it's true. And in terms of finding our purpose throughout all of this, I'll be really blunt. Had my mom and dad not died, I likely would have never been in the grief space doing the work that I'm doing now, being a coach. And in this grief space, though, I have found my purpose, hands down. My purpose, my dharma, my calling, whatever you want to call it. I personally feel that I have found what I am no doubt meant to be doing with my life: healing, coaching, serving, and supporting. And I've also found an insanely awesome group of people, many of which I now consider to be good friends in this space, that are highly supportive and amazing and funny and wonderful, that I never would have found otherwise. When you know in your heart you're being called to do something else, there's nothing like it. It simply doesn't feel like work. You feel fulfilled, inspired, motivated, in alignment with what you are supposed to be doing with your life here. You are in this expansion I keep talking about, and you are just deeply excited to get up and do what you do every day. Who doesn't want that, right? So that being said, the inspiration, motivation, willingness to put yourself out there and tapping into a deep passion that comes along with discovering what you are really meant to do in this world with your one and only very precious life, that is a next level experience. And I want you to have that. And I mean this so wholeheartedly when I say that I want you to feel that that is possible, because it is. And guess what? When you do that, other people will feel it too, because there is no denying it. I can't tell you how many people who knew me like pre-parent loss and see what I'm doing now that have said things like, Tara, you are glowing. I can so see that this is what you are meant to be doing. You even look and sound different. Like you have totally found your calling and now you're answering it. However they say this to me, whether they're referring to coaching or this podcast, whatever it is, I have stepped into this new phase of my life and this new sense of self in such a way that there is simply no going back. And I know you're capable of that too. And sometimes it does take losing a job or losing something big and profound at times for us to realize that. So yes, I'm being that friend right now that's encouraging you to see this hardship as an opportunity for personal growth, for self-reflection, and for exploring new opportunities. Take a beat and enjoy the break, even if it's only a small one, right? You might not be unemployed forever, okay? And also explain this to friends and family if you have to. In some ways, I feel like we really don't owe anyone anything, right? It's our life. But I know the responsibilities of life and family and everything under the sun often comes first. And that is absolutely okay, of course. But you are a massive part of that foundation of your family, and you need to be okay and fulfilled and happy too. So always remember that. Put your mental and physical health at the forefront. Have fun networking. Upskill the heck out of yourself. Learn new things. Learn about yourself and keep that positive mindset going, my friend, because it is so powerful. And whether you stay in a similar job or industry that you just left, or you seek out a new one, I have zero doubt that you will find exactly where you are meant to be. All you need to do is know that in the fibers of your being that you are capable of that too. All right, so those are my closing inspirational words on this topic today. With all of that being said, thank you so much for hanging out with me in this episode today. If this topic resonated with you, or perhaps you think someone in your life could use it, I would deeply appreciate you sharing this episode or the podcast and passing it along so I can continue bringing more conversations about life with grief and all this entails and coping tools like this to those who need it. So I am super grateful for you being here, and I will see you in the next episode. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you are taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, ways to work with me, to shop my daily journal, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Life with Grief Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you haven't left a rating or a review, please do so. I would so appreciate it. Or if you feel so inclined, to share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. I'll catch you in the next episode.